Well, welcome. It's so good to see you all here at the same time. Nearly everybody I know in this parish is sitting here today, so this is really fabulous. It is a joy to worship at Easter, no matter how I feel or how my life might be going. Festivals are important to us human beings. It's important because we don't always feel so great. Our life gets tedious and it just seems to stretch on and on. Some of us on and on longer than others. But in that, if we didn't have times of festival and joy and feasting and maybe drinking a little too much for those who like to do that, but mostly feasting, but just carrying with us that sense that God wants in us joy. Even when times are tough, and maybe the most when times are tough, we need times when we're reminded that all is not hopeless, and in fact, God is with us. But in the story of the first day at the tomb, this coming of the women, for those of you, I've been sort of doing history and geography and so forth through Lent. But if you go to Jerusalem today, one of the places you can pay to go see is the tomb of Jesus, which nobody actually believes is the tomb of Jesus. It's in the wrong place. But it's an intact first century tomb that would have been exactly like the one where Jesus was laid. And the interesting thing is the door isn't much taller than this. Of course, I guess first century Jewish people weren't all that tall, but the door is small enough you have to bend over even if you're short to get in. And then over here is this what looks like a huge millstone. A big round stone that was probably about 6 feet in diameter, about as tall as me, about this thick. And it was in a trench that sloped slightly towards the door. And then it had a chalk in it that held it in place. They probably had it nailed to the wall or whatever, but it's huge. And what I want to say is, if that thing has rolled down over in front of that hole, it takes some real intention to get back in. And no one person could possibly do it. It's just, maybe the strongest man in the world or something, but no normal person. It would take a group of people to roll that stone back away to open it up. So for Mary to show up, for crying out loud, he's barely in there. And for her to show up the next day, to go to do, when I say the next day after the Sabbath, they had to let Jesus lay there a day because it was the Sabbath. He was killed on Friday. Sabbath starts Friday evening, goes through Saturday evening, so it really wasn't until Sunday morning that the women were going to do the proper washing and preparing of the body because Joseph did it very quickly and didn't do those anointing things. And they wanted to go say goodbye. That's what they were expecting to do. So to get there and find this huge stone rolled up, I guess there were enough of them, they could have done it, I suppose, was a shock. And then, it's not even daylight hardly yet, and then they look in, there's an angel. Now, John has 2 angels, Mark has 1 angel, this was so shocking that nobody could get the story straight. Exactly what it was everybody saw. And imagine this, just if you went to your best friend's grave and it had been dug up, you would be shocked, horrified, frightened, mad, a whole bunch of stuff, but not rational. Be really upset. And so she is. And she's confused. She doesn't recognize, oh, these are the angels. Everybody comes. John runs, and he just kind of peeks in because he's scared what he's going to find. And Peter goes in there. And, I love this about Jesus. He was tidy in the resurrection. Folded up his linens and his little headband and left them nicely. Y'all would have liked that. He was raised by a good Jewish mother to do his chores. So, this is just, even that is weird. If somebody's stolen the body, why did they leave the cloths neatly laying on the stone shelf? Very confused. They're all running back. And so the first response and thought of all of them, no matter what the New Testament says Jesus has said to them over and over again about rising from the dead, they still don't expect it. Too much to imagine. And so their first thing is, who's taken the body? Everybody's saying, who took him? If they took him, where'd they put him? Why did they steal his body? You see, they're still thinking about a dead body. That's what their expectations are about. And this empty tomb then just makes them think the dead body's been taken away. And it's not until whatever these encounters start to be. First, with Mary Magdalene, seeing a man standing, a Jewish man, normal looking guy, right over there, thinks he's the gardener. Now, if you think, how could she not recognize it was Jesus? Well, expectations matter. I'm going to tell a story on myself. A couple of years after I got out of seminary, seminaries, especially in the University of the South, which is in a really isolated place up on the Cumberland Plateau, you get really close to the people you're going to school with. And so, and then they shoot you out after 3 years of going to chapel every day and having congregations that can sing and people playing the organ and all this following right. Then they just shoot you out into a little church in West Texas where they don't do any of that stuff. Boy, it was lonely at the age of 26 out there. Those ranchers and the ranchers' wives. Man. It was tough. And so I was really grateful for the opportunity to fly back east to visit one of my closest friends who eventually became the Bishop of Delaware, now retired. And I flew out to Virginia to see him and visit him in his first churches, at a couple of little churches. And so he meets me, in those days he meets me at the gate. we go, and he says, let's go get something to eat. And I say, sure. So we go into one of the restaurants in the airport, which I thought was kind of odd. And he says, let's sit over here. And I walked over and I looked and I said, well, there's already somebody there. Here's an empty table. And he said, Scott, let's sit over here. And I looked again and I said, there's somebody sitting there. That somebody was another one of my best friends from seminary. I looked at him at least twice, maybe 3 times. But because I had no expectation that he would be there, and they had planned it as a surprise, I didn't see him. And I didn't recognize him. It was too good to be true. Because it was so important to me to reconnect and sort of get my bearings again with people who knew me. So all I want to say is, for me, it's not so hard to believe that Mary turned around with no expectation that she would see Jesus. She saw another Jewish man with dark hair, brown eyes, and a dark beard. And he was the gardener. Couldn't be Jesus. And so the dawning revelation, if I were to say, what's the theme of these Easter stories, is the dawning revelation. It happens at dawn. We use light. We're supposed to actually light this before the sun comes up. All these issues of light is about the dawning awakening within us that there is a living God who has power over life and death. Not just a remote, the God of the deists in the 1700s, the clockwork God, the God that built it all and then stepped back and is just watching it run. But having they had a very remote, transcendent God. But Jesus introduces us to the right in your face, right down here, all the way into your grave God. And out again, so that it can be in our hearts. Now, however you want to understand Jesus being alive now, I guess at least the minimalist way to understand that even a non-believer could say is, well, we believe it because we say we believe it. That's all. And that's sort of a step of belief. But if you can't imagine it, then you're closer to the real thing. It's when we try to think these miracles, these mysteries, these acts of God. You know, the truth is not one human being saw the resurrection. Nobody saw the resurrection. The resurrection happened in a tomb in the dark between the Father and the Son, however that was. So in proclaiming the Easter message, I have to say to you that the proclamation is something that stretches the imagination maybe far enough that we begin to touch the divine. I truly believe that our imaginative selves reflect the creative nature of God's image in us. And so it's okay to imagine. You know, what makes me mad is a kind of Christianity where everything is pinched down to one linear set of truth statements that everybody memorizes when you're a Christian. If you come and you can quote what's memorized, you got it. How unimaginative that is. I want to say to you, I don't get Easter. I don't understand how God did this. I imagine over and over again, what would it be like to see somebody alive that was dead? And then I have to do what is always done by preachers, is I have to pull back and find either metaphors or analogies. So what I'm going to say to you is, I'm going to hope I stand up here. George was dead and raised to life this last year. Witnessed it. Hit from behind at 100 miles an hour on the freeway. Car turned over. I hope this is okay to share. And you knew there was an angel there. I don't get it. I can't explain it. But I can witness that you're alive. You see, that's all the witnesses could do, was say, he was dead, and we know he was dead. And then he came and visited us. That's my witness. That's my experience. And there have been any number of times through my life, even though I can't ever remember not being a Christian, I never got another choice. But I sure behaved differently than Christians are probably supposed to behave. I lived outside of those norms. I lived so far outside of those norms, or I experienced things that were so painful that I thought I was going to die. Or it was so fearful that I thought I couldn't survive. I wouldn't make it. Feels that way. And sometimes we just feel dead inside. Can't feel anything anymore. My son has some mental illnesses, and in the first part of trying to figure out treatment for him, he took one favorite thing And he finally said, I'm not ever going to take this again. And I said, well, why? He says, I feel nothing, and that's worse than feeling bad. You see, we can die. We can live in places sometimes physically close to death, sometimes emotionally, certainly spiritually. There are all kinds of things in this world that can put us down to the ground, almost to the grave, maybe even desiring the grave. And yet, look at us, we're all still here. We're here. So we beat our fears over and over again. I've experienced over and over again, just when I thought I was dead for good, something drags me up and puts new life and puts something else there. And I've been restored on multiple occasions for multiple different reasons at this point in my journey. So conversion to the risen Lord has been an over and over again thing. I don't believe in reincarnation. I do believe in reconversion, or more conversion, or deeper conversion. So I hope for you, I've got to stop. I hope for you, I'm so excited about the life of Jesus, and even this inexplicable end, which we celebrate today. I hope you go away with some hope that God knows you, that in the suffering of Jesus, the mind of the eternal, transcendent God that's way out there experienced human pain from the human perspective. And we got to see God's love in human perspective. All of this so that we can keep on looking for the good. Trying to see Jesus even when we don't expect it. You see, with a risen Lord, if that risen Lord, I was going to say the minimal thing is that risen Lord is in our minds. Jesus is still alive in his teachings. But I do believe there's more. That a risen Lord, a God who has experienced us, is a God that is connected to us every day, all night. We live because God gives us life. The Christian faith is simply a way to acknowledge, become conscious of, embrace, and live out the story of Jesus in our own lives as best we can, and accept all the forgiveness we need. All the forgiveness we need. And then some. To live new lives, make new beginnings, grieve old wounds, and let them go. So this Easter, I hope you have new life, new hope, new eyes, and just a little bit more awake to the life of God. God bless you all.
Amen.